Hey everybody, today I want to talk a little bit about why I do not use activated carbon in any of my filters, except in rare circumstances. There are times where I do use it, but they are very few and far between, so we're going to talk about why that is today. But before we get to that, I want to make it very clear that this in no way should be thought of as any kind of definitive video about the use of carbon or how carbon works or anything like that. This is just my personal point of view. This is how I feel about it. This is why I don't use it. If you take away from this something different and you decide that maybe using carbon might be a good idea for you, then that's great. You know, I'm not saying this is how anybody else should manage their tanks. I'm just saying this is how I manage my tanks and this is how I approach it. So you can make what you want from that, but I'm not in any way suggesting this is how you should or shouldn't do it. I'm just telling you the way I do it. So the reason I don't use carbon is because I just don't see any point in it. It really doesn't serve any purpose for me. What activated carbon is really like a very, very fine sieve filter. It's a very, very porous material, but the pores are microscopic. So tiny, tiny molecular size particulates will get trapped in this. You can literally remove the red color from wine. If you pour wine through enough carbon, it'll come out clear on the other end. And therefore, you can remove tannin, you can remove malodor. You know, if you've got fishy smelling odors in your tank, the carbon will actually remove the chemicals that are causing those odors, but it also removes medications. It will pull hormones out of the water. It pulls all kinds of stuff out of the water. It's not discriminate with what it filters. And so very early on in the hobby, I used to use it. When you buy filters, they come with it. Everybody talks about it like it's just part of the functioning of a filter. And so I just assumed that it was part of the functioning of a filter. And after a while, I began to wonder what benefit it was serving me. I had some tanks that had a lot of tannin in them. And I, again, at the time, thought that maybe I should get the tannin out of the tank. This is kind of more before I had developed my own sort of tank personality, and I sort of went with what I was told by other people. And a lot of people don't like tannin, and they think it's something that needs to be removed from the tank. And carbon is often suggested as a way to do this. And so I would use a half pound of the stuff at a time. I'd put it in a tray in one of my canister filters, and I never could tell any difference in the amount of tannin. I mean, maybe for a day or two it wasn't quite as stained after a big water change, and then by the end of the week though, it was just tannin stained water again. And I never saw a difference that the carbon was making. And so, I mean, if it wasn't really doing the only one thing I wanted it to do, I didn't really see any point in continuing to use it. So I looked into it a little bit, and there's a lot of speculative discussion out there. Keep in mind, this is speculative discussion that carbon can actually cause some issues within your tank. The most notorious is hole in the head or lateral line erosion disorder that you'll get in fish. A lot of people out there associate that with using carbon. Not 100% sure why, but that's associated with using carbon. Again, I don't even know if there's any truth to that, but this is a common theme that's out there. So when I was reading that, and I thought, well, if it might be doing something bad, and it's not doing anything that I can see that it's benefiting me in any way, why am I spending money, taking time, putting effort? It's pointless. It does nothing for me. None of my fish tanks have any kind of stinky fish odor to them. And on that note, I would even suggest not using carbon because it's going to mask your stinky fish smelling odor, and you're not going to know that something's not right in your tank, because your tank should not have a fishy smelling odor. It should smell sort of earthy or natural. It should smell more like a fresh pond than stinky, fishy. If it smells like that, something's probably not going on quite right in your tank. So rather than have something in there that would mask that odor and prevent you from knowing something's going on in your tank, I'd rather just let it go natural. That way you can tell with your nose that something's not right in your tank. But carbon will remove those kind of fishy odors from your tank and whatever. But I never had any problem with that. The only thing I ever wanted to use carbon for was tannin, and it never really seemed to have any kind of an impact, so I never really worried about it. And I stopped using the stuff years ago. The only thing I can see where I might run carbon It was if I was breeding and I really specifically wanted to regulate the amount of hormones that were in the water or something to that effect. Again, I don't know enough about that to know whether that's even a feasible thing, but that would be where my thoughts would go, something specific like that. If I'd put medication in the tank and I wanted to get the medication out, I could run carbon and the carbon will then pull the medication out. That's why they always tell you on packages of medication, remove any carbon from your filter before you put this medication in. The carbon will take that medication right back out of your water. So personally, I just do water changes. You know, if I got to get medication out of the tank after I've done it, I do a series of water changes and that physically removes it, and I just don't see the point in carbon. Again, it really just doesn't serve any purpose for me. I don't like making things more complicated when I'm trying to solve a problem. So for example, let's say tannin in the water is a problem for you. You're trying to find a solution to all this tannin in your water. The simple solution to me would be to do what I already do with my tank, which is a water change. Water changes are your friend. They're always going to be good for you. Well, can't say that exactly, but for the most part, water changes are your friend. So you're going to do a water change. You're going to remove a bunch of tannin. Just do slightly larger water changes. Just do them slightly more frequently. And there's your solution to your tannin problem. Adding carbon is making my system more complicated. It's another thing I have to purchase. It's another thing I have to change when I do my filter maintenance. It's another thing I have to think about. It takes extra time. I know it's not complicated necessarily, but it's additional complications to my system. I'm not necessarily going to solve a problem by adding more complications. If I can solve that problem by reducing complications, I'm always going to try to make it simpler. And carbon just gets knocked right out of the picture for me because that doesn't make anything simpler for me and it doesn't serve any purpose. So I just don't use it and I don't buy it. If you've got a purpose for it, if you've got to use it, or if you just use it on faith because you've always used it and your tanks run great, so why change it now? That's great. I'm not knocking anybody for what they do or how they do it. As I said in the beginning, this is just my thoughts on why I don't use carbon, and that's kind of it. But I would like to hear your thoughts. I'd like to hear why you do or don't, or whether you agree with me, or what your thoughts about the hole in the head disease, you know, that whole controversy about that. That'd be interesting to hear. So let me know. Put your thoughts down below. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget this one is my waterfall tank. Thanks again, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.